Hey guys, let's talk about books. I was actually in the shower this morning. I thought, you know what? I really feel like talking about books. So here we are. If you can hear what sounds like a stampede in the background, it's actually my cats chasing each other up and down the hallway above me. So usually the magic that happens when I edit the sound will get rid of most of that. But if you hear some thumping, it's just my children. What can you do? Let's talk about books that I have read, which these are the final books of 2024 for me. I ended up with 66 books at the end of 2024, which is the same as I did in 2023, and I did 67 the year before. So that feels like a pretty solid number to achieve. I'm happy with everything over 52. Oh, now my human child is awake. So I'm happy to be reading. It's fantastic. It's just a number. It's nice to have a big number at the end of the year, but it's also nice to have read things and to have talked about books and to generally enrich my life and my brain. So the books that I read at the end of December were all short stories. First of all, The Wood at Midwinter, Susanna Clarke. This was 60 pages, all in all. I think including the big long thing at the end. Yeah, she wrote a big long afterword. Did I say it by Susanna Clarke? She wrote a long afterword as well. So this was a short story about a girl set in, it says it's set in the world of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. But there's no indication in the text that it would be set in that world if you weren't told that. And it's about a girl who feels like 18th, 19th century doesn't fit in with her family and social expectations, and just likes to wander in the wood by herself, talking to the animals, talking to the trees, and finds that by talking to the woods this particular day, she's going to get a baby. And just the discussion about the baby, which is not human, and getting the baby, looking after the baby, like all looking forward to that. And then she tells her sister, when her sister comes to collect her from the wood, that she's going to have this baby. And her sister's like, what? And anyway, then the next day she disappears forever. So that feels very Susanna Clarke and very vibes. But the most interesting thing I found about this one was the afterword, where Susanna Clarke is talking about where ideas for stories come from, and her having gone back to myths that she'd read earlier in her life, and seeing that her story ideas had come from those stories, and she hadn't made that connection until going back and rereading them. And the process of letting stories ferment in your brain to create retellings, even if you're not consciously aware that they are retellings. I found that super interesting as somebody who started and abandoned an English degree. I'd love to go back. I would love to have time. But I found that bit really interesting. The illustrations in here are gorgeous. I think I showed you last time. Here's one. That's the main character of the story, Meredith. Her dog and her pig, dogs and her pig, and talking to the trees and the wind. And it's just gorgeous. Gorgeous little story. Would I pay $15 for it? Yes, because it's pretty. Not for the story. I also read this short story, The Lost Soul by Olga Tokarczuk, as translated by Antonia Lloyd-Jones and illustrated by Joanna Conceyo. And this is marketed as a children's book and categorized as a children's book, and I don't think in any way it is a children's book. The illustration style is too detailed and understated, I think, to appeal to children. Or maybe that's just the bias of the books that my child had access to and I had access to as a child. Like, these illustration styles would be in the children's books that I read from my grandma's shelves when I was a child, you know, like the olden days kind of stuff. But the premise of the story also is about a dude who just one day lost his soul and he just felt shit about it and he didn't know what to do. So he went to the doctor and the doctor said, I think you've lost your soul, but it's okay because your soul just moves slower in time than you. So your soul is still in your past and you just have to slow down and wait for it to catch up. And so all the illustrations are just of this man living a quiet life in the woods, waiting for his soul to catch up with him. And then each page is one side, what the soul is doing, where it's catching up in his life, and then this man just living his quiet life waiting for his soul. And then eventually they're reunited. So it's a very simple story, but I don't think it's a children's story. And definitely one that you just sit with and you take in the pictures and the illustrations and you just let it sit with you. So it wasn't cheap and I bought it just because I wanted it. But it's one that sticks, you know, the simple message of just like slow down. It sticks and sometimes you need to hear it. Ogotuktuk has another book coming out, illustrated children's book, next year, I think, which is on my wish list, but we'll see. I might wait till it's, you know, not new release hardback price. But it was lovely. And finally, something I've been reading on and off since September is Shirley Jackson's The Lottery and Other Stories. It's a short story collection, finishing with The Lottery, which is apparently one of her most famous stories. And every single one of these was disturbing, which you would know, I guess, if you've read Shirley Jackson. The only other book or story I've read by her is We've Always Lived in the Castle, which I loved. It would be in my top books of 2024 that I read. This one, there were some gems and there were some lesser gems, but all of them were unnerving or just disturbing, unsettling in some way. So if that's your vibe, I would recommend. Some of them were one at the start was about a woman who woke up getting ready for her wedding day and then spent all of the day looking for her groom. Couldn't find him anywhere. Increasingly desperate, trying to find this guy. There was lots actually about new people moving to the neighborhood and then they don't behave in the correct way and they're just gently, slowly shunned out of the neighborhood society. There's one that really resonated with me. I don't know what it says about me, about a woman and her husband who like was so excited because the dates lined up. They could go to New York for a week or two. The dates lined up with babysitting and her husband's work trip and she could get time away and it just was all going to be an amazing holiday, and they get to New York and it's amazing and they're having the best time. And then slowly over the week or 10 days that they're there, they begin to notice that New York isn't as bright and shiny as they built it up in their minds. Things are falling apart. The handle of the taxi fell off. They noticed the worn carpets and furniture and like seats on the bus, and just everything over time for her becomes, it's all her POV, becomes more and more disintegrated and scary. And it gets to the point where she's left alone in the apartment where they're staying and she thinks, oh, I'll just go out for lunch. And she can't cross at the intersection of the road, even though it's like traffic lights, crosswalk thing. She can't bring herself to take the step because just everything is fucking scary. And I felt that in my soul. Just the build up, the excitement of the holiday, and then it doesn't ever meet those expectations. You start to notice the cracks, and then everything just becomes too much. So that was just a sample of things that I remember from this. The actual story of the lottery, I can see why people love it. I can see why people study it. Wasn't the most impactful one in this book for me. Definitely one I'm thinking about, but there were other ones that resonated with me more. So glad to have grabbed that. And I hope, because when I bought this, I was book shopping with somebody that I met through this channel, John, and I grabbed the pretty version that matches from this series from Penguin. Penguin? Yeah. Cloth bound little short stories version of the lottery. And then John said he wanted to read the lottery. So I said, you get that version, I'll get this one with all the extras, because this matches my copy of We've Always Lived in the Castle with the green Penguin Classics spine. So I was happy to swap there. So I'm glad to have read this all. And I hope, John, that you get to yours soon, because I know that your TBR will physically crush you one day. I am still reading this behemoth Time, Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. I'm 80% done, which this 20% left is still 300 pages. That's still a novel. So I'm getting my money's worth having bought 3 copies of this. I noticed actually when I was downstairs the other day, I was hanging out with the cats because they've been very clingy to Mama recently. I was noticing that this just flops very nicely. And so even though it's freaking heavy, I can put it on my desk or on the floor and just let it take the weight and me turn the pages. Not good posture, I will say that, but so I have actually read some of this as well as on my Kindle and listening. And I tell you what, I'm having a grand old time. It is such a good book. I'm struggling only with the parts where I didn't reread the series before this one came out. There's 4 books nearly as long as this preceding it, and I didn't have time. And I feel like I didn't study for the test, because all of the world building that's happened over the past 4 books, this is the explanation and the culmination. And so things like there's characters in these books called the Heralds, and they are from almost the very founding of the humans on this planet. I won't get too far into it, but the Heralds were flavor to the story, and now they're integral to the story. And I don't know who each of them are or what their powers are or what they do, where they are right now because they're still alive like thousands of years later. So in that sense, I'm confused about what's happening. There's also things called shards in this world. They're things like honor and valor and ambition, and they reach across the broader universe of the Cosmere. And again, it was flavor until this book, and now I just don't understand what is happening. But that's okay, because I'm just treating it like science fiction and letting it just be while I continue with the characters that I do know. And yes, there's parts that I'm finding more boring. There's some characters whose stories I'm not so invested in. But overall, there's not a single point where I've thought, this is dragging. And now we're in the final 20-30%, which is where Sanderson, they call it the Sander Lanch, where the last part of the book is just an epic roller coaster right to the finish. And I've got theories about what's going to go down, and I can't share them with anybody because nobody I know in real life is reading this book. But I'm having a grand old time. And I think I've got about 5 or 6 hours left to go. So that's still a couple of days since, I have to go to work and interact with my family, blah, blah, blah. But I'm having so much fun. I am so far impressed, and I'm confident that Sanderson will pull off a resolution that is satisfying to me, because there isn't a book so far where that hasn't happened. And then because we've had Christmas since we last talked, I have acquired some books. I have from my mum as a Christmas gift this, which one I'm so excited to read this. This is the Medieval Scriptorium, Making Books in the Middle Ages by Sarah J. Charles. Now, today I brought my glasses so that I can read you the blurb. Let me see if there is a blurb on this hardcover version. Inside. All right. These are going to reflect the light. I can't see. You're so blurry now, so I can't see if it's reflecting the light. I'll do my best. This book takes the reader on an immersive journey through medieval manuscript production in the Latin Christian world. Each chapter opens with a lively vignette by a medieval narrator, including a parchment maker, scribe, and illuminator, introducing various aspects of manuscript production. Sarah J. Charles poses the question, what actually is a scriptorium, and explores the development of the medieval scriptorium from its early Christian beginnings through to its eventual decline and the growth of the printing press. With the written word at the very heart of the Christian monastic movement, we see the immense amount of labour, planning, and networks needed to produce each individual manuscript. By tapping into these processes and procedures, we can experience medieval life through the lens of a manuscript maker. Like, doesn't that sound amazing? If you are me. I'm so hyped for this. As soon as Wind and Truth is finished, this one is going to be the physical read that I'm doing. It's also got illustrations in here, I think. So that's binding and that's bound. That one is from the Codex Aureus of Saint Emmeram from the 9th century. If I move closer, you won't be in focus. But gorgeous. What does it look like without its clothes on? Pretty. So, thank you, Mum. I am so hyped for this. This was published in 2024, so it's only literally just come out. I was not expecting to have a hardcover version. I also picked up a couple of things on Kindle. I grabbed The Ministry of Time because my book club is reading it in January, and that just changed the light because I just opened a page. My book club chose it for January, and I don't think I'm going to like it, but it was cheap on Kindle. It was, the amount of money that I've spent on bad coffee, so it's not a problem if I don't like it. It was money I was happy to spend to try it, but it's a time travel story, which maybe it's got historical figures in it, which usually I don't like. It's a romance, which meh. Having said that, my favourite book as a teenager, one of them, was a portal fantasy time travel story. So you never know. I say I don't like romance, but all of my favourite books are technically romances, so you never know. The historical person inserted in the story, though, I don't have high hopes. But Storygraph just released this new feature in their paid-for version when they have like AI recommendation, and they've just upgraded it. They've had that feature for a while, but they've just upgraded it to be more detailed, and it has like a pros cons list and then like a final conclusion about, based on your other reading, will you like this book? And Storygraph reckons that probably I will like it, so I'll give it a go. If we DNF it, we DNF it. So I grabbed that now. The blurb says, there are several ways to tell a story. A civil servant starts working as a bridge, a liaison, helpmate, and housemate in an experimental project that brings expatriates from the past into the 21st century. This is a science fiction story. In a London safe house in the 2020s, a disoriented Victorian polar explorer chain smokes while listening to Spotify and learning about political correctness. This is a comedy. Oh, comedy. During a long sultry summer, as the shadows around them grow long and dangerous, two people fall in love against all odds. This is a romance. The Ministry of Time is a novel about Commander Graham Gore and a woman known only as the Bridge. As their relationship turns from the strictly professional into something more and uneasy, truths begin to emerge. They are forced to face the reality of the project that brought them together. I also don't like stuff set in the modern day. I live here, I don't want to read about it. So I'm fully intending to hate this book, so let's see if my assumptions can be challenged. I also bought yesterday a book that had been on my wish list for a while, and I don't know why I had put it on my wish list. It might have just been the cover, but here we are. So when it came up like for $2 on Kindle yesterday, I went to Storygraph and was like, what is this book about and will I like it? And Storygraph was like, overwhelmingly, you will love this book. So, and once again, give it a go. This is The Last Heir to Blackwood Library by Hester Fox. It says, in post-World War I England, a young woman inherits a mysterious library and must untangle its powerful secrets. Don't really enjoy stories set in World War I or II, but the rest of it sounds good. With the stroke of a pen, 23-year-old Ivy Radcliffe becomes Lady Hayworth, owner of a sprawling estate on the Yorkshire moors. Ivy has never heard of Blackwood Abbey or the ancient bloodline from which she's descended. With nothing to keep her in London since losing her brother in the Great War, she warily makes her way to her new home. The Abbey is foreboding. The servants are reserved and suspicious. But there is a treasure waiting behind locked doors, a magnificent library. Despite cryptic warnings from the staff, Ivy feels irresistibly drawn to its dusty shelves. La 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 la. Ghosts and curses, enigmatic manuscript. Ivy must reclaim her own story before it vanishes forever. So I'm happy to give that one a go too. We will see. We will see. That is it. There's so much on my TBR that I'm excited to read. In fact, I'm going to make 2025 my year of rereading. I probably should sit down and make a list because there's a bunch of things on these shelves and on my Kindle that I have read a long time ago and I want to go back and refresh my memory. Some of these things are Tigana by Guy Gabriel Kay. I've only read that once and I really want to come back to that one. There is The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco, which was one of those red ones. Actually, I really want to show Ash the movie of The Name of the Rose with Sean Connery in it, but I can't find it streaming anywhere. So if you have a lead, I think Ash would really like it. It's too long and too political for him to enjoy reading. But I say long, like Ash is not afraid of a long book, but he likes more adventure action books rather than slow-paced detective mysteries, which The Name of the Rose is. And I would like to get to some non-fiction that's ready on my shelves, like The Medieval Scriptorium. I've got a couple more histories of the book that I'd like to read. Portable Magic by Emma Smith. I'd love to get to that really soon. Just stuff like that. Going to Church in Medieval England. Nicholas Orme. I bought this for myself a couple of Christmases ago. Haven't got to it yet. Would really like to know what's inside. That's my reading plans for 2025. It's just to read the books that I already own. Which, you know, it could be something, could be something. My other goal for reading in 2025 is to use my journal more to record my reading. So I always record the books that I have read. This is my new one for 2025 and I transplanted my 2024 reads into it just to flick back. And sometimes I think, did I read that this year? No, it was January last year. So I transplanted my 2024 list over. But I also want to keep a running list of the books that I bought and why I bought them. Why did I buy the, what's it called? The one that I just talked about, The Last Heir of Blackwood something. Why did I buy that? Write that down so that I can look back and remember and see if that expectation when I bought it matches the reality of having read it. And also, stay there, hold that thought. Oh, hang on, I'm about to run out of recording time. Stay there while I reset this thing. This is something that I'll wait till I stop crinkling. This is something that I sell in my shop. It's a tiny little book review notepad. There's 50 pages in here, and I want to use them, fill it in, and then stick it in my bullet journal. Just to have the novelty of filling this out to encourage me to do it, and then stick them in. And like, there's not much space for writing really. So it says title, author, genre, date, publish date, start date, finish, notes, rating, just to get myself into the habit of writing down my book thoughts, because I don't. I just come here and I waffle the things that I remember to say as I'm talking to you. And that is as far as I get in terms of thinking deeply about a book. I think about it all the time. Like in the shower, I'll think about what am I going to say to you? But in terms of having the discipline and the practice of writing it down, I need to do something. So that's an option. Otherwise, I might just try and put them, like, because this is just my daily bullet journal. So on the day that I finish the book, write it down, what I'm thinking about it. In the past, I've tried to make like just, you know, a whole page. This is the book, this is the notes as I'm reading. And I just never come back to it. I just don't remember to sit down and make the time to do it. So that's my reading goal for this year, is make time to think about, evaluate, critique the things that I'm reading, not just shovel it into my face, because you can eat all the healthy food you want, but you've got to exercise as well. We will see. Probably by the end of the year, I will have entirely forgotten that I had this intention, but it is my intention anyway. I saw Cathy Grimm from the Grimm Reader using like a dated planner to go through each day and write down what she'd been reading on that day. I don't know if she was recording thoughts as well, but definitely the reading. And I love that. So I've started incorporating that in my bullet journal. But I don't mean for this to turn into an ad for my shop, but my shop also sells those 5-year, you know, couple of lines a day kind of planners. And that I think would be amazing for doing the same thing, because then you can look back and see what you were reading last year and what you thought of it then versus what you think of it now a year later. So if I get in the habit of writing every day what I've been reading and maybe what I'm thinking about it at the time, I might start using the 5-year one. Just, you know, it just as I go to bed, actually write it down as I'm in bed. I did try one of those 5-year planner things before, just in my daily life, and it was really interesting to go back a year later and things that I've written down, and of course you've forgotten it, or it wasn't such a big deal a year later, or, you know, so that could be more fun for reading than for my actual life. So that's my plans for 2024. No, 2025. My goodness. Would you like a stats video from Storygraph? I don't know. I don't know if I can be bothered making one if you don't want to see it. So please let me know. Or if you're mum and you don't ever leave me a comment, please text me. Tell me what you want. And I will see, because I have looked at the stats and I put them all up on Instagram stories, which will be gone by the time you see this. But could be interesting to have a look and a deep dive. All right, now I have to have a snack and go to my paying job. So I will see you guys later. Bye.